Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Tanner Swift, and I'll be your moderator for today's session. I'm pleased to introduce today's speaker, Gurpreet Kaur, but before I hand the mic over to our presenter, I do have a few housekeeping items to cover about this presentation. Today's webinar will be recorded and made available on demand after the live session. We will provide you with some of those details at the end. Also, we'd love to hear from you during today's presentation. During the session, if you are on WebEx with us and have any questions for our presenter, please use the Q&A panel where our wonderful panelists are ready to respond. We will also have a couple poll questions for you to participate in throughout today's session, so be on the lookout for those using the Slido app here on WebEx. If you do experience any audio issues with today's webinar, I will provide a call number and a WebEx access code in the chat screen for you to be able to listen in. So without further ado, I'd like to kick things off by welcoming Gurpreet. Gurpreet, over to you.
Thank you, Tanner. Hey everyone, warm welcome. My name is Gurpreet and I work as Solutions Architect with Cisco, and I'm excited to have you here. Back to you, Tanner, with the full questions, and after that we can kickstart.
Yeah, our first poll question today that we're going to push live. Once again, we'll go use on Slido. You can provide your response. What does CSA stand for? What does CSA stand for? We'll give y'all a few minutes to provide your answers on that poll question before we move on to a couple others that we'll have through you throughout this session. And Gurpreet, right back to you. We can get carried away with today's presentation.
Awesome. Thank you, Tanner. Here we go. Sharing my screen and the presentation. Once again, warm welcome to everyone on this session on business risk observability, or BRO with CSA, or, oh, that was a poll question. Cisco secure application. I'm sure you might have guessed it by now. So as I mentioned, my name is Gurpreet Kaur and I'm the solution architect with Cisco, and I will be speaking about the topics: Cisco secure application, what it means to me as a customer and how it adds value to my daily business. We'll also speak about business risk observability. What are the tools and technologies that work behind the scene to get us this score, which will help us to mitigate any sort of vulnerabilities and threats in our system. And if you feel this product is so exciting, you can get onboarded with the requirements that I'll share. Also we'll have why do you need to trust Cisco and why Cisco is the buzz on the street. After this, we'll have a demo followed up, so please stay tuned. Okay, so speaking about security, I'm sure every one of you will agree that it's always the small gaps or loopholes in the system. That's how the threat actors find their way in. And why security is top of mind for everyone, because we all live in a very dynamic world, and the impact of the security breaches can increase very quickly, such as when the war erupted in Ukraine. These attacks, they were initially targeted for wide berth of institutions, the governments, and they quickly enveloped companies, whether they were on a side or neutral of the conflict. So just a month later, you can see there was an increase of 800% in the cyber attack. And, you know, this count is really, really huge. So not just during the Ukraine war, but overall more and more breaches are happening every year. And what's more interesting to note here is that it takes more than 3 quarters to a year to detect that there is a breach in the system. Now, imagine you have a 7 business critical issue and you didn't even know about it for 200 days. And then you didn't know about it and it take another 90 days for you to solve it. So the net of all this information that I'm sharing with you is that even with all the spending, with all the continued investment, with all the tools, with all the security capabilities that are deployed, it's clearly not working. So that's why we can see from 2020 to 2021, there is an increase of almost 68% in breaches. And companies are in continuous stage of exposure, and this comes from the gaps that we have talked about earlier. And there is another factor that adds on top of that. And that's the team silos that we have in our businesses, which directly lessens the visibility because the business focus for each team is different, and sometimes the team goals could be contradictory to each other. So when we speak about security, we speak about different personas for security. And we have a couple of personas here, like Allison from IT Ops, Zane from SecOps, and Aurora from AppSec teams are often substituted by DevSecOps or DevOps team. So let's understand what are the challenges that each of the team has and how CSA can help mitigating those challenges. Speaking about Allison, it's not that she is not concerned about the app security, but at the end of the day, what's more important for her is to ensure that she is providing the best user experience. She ensures that the application is highly available all the time. And if we speak about Zane from the SecOps teams, he literally needs a God mode. He needs to know what's happening in the system, all the transaction, and that's why he often found this information that he needs to cipher through. It's overwhelmed. So if we speak about Aurora, on the other hand, from the AppSec team, she and her team is working on uh, production environment, and she's trying to fix some security bugs. And there's so many bugs that she needs to prioritize which one to pick on first, right? So she's trying, literally struggling there. And for that matter, we need to have a single solution which can, club all these personas together. And what is that solution? This is Cisco Secure Application. So with Cisco Secure Application, the teams get a common platform. They get to see what's happening, what's the pressing issue that they need to prioritize, and they get the visibility through a common platform, and also get the solutions to remediate and to fix any of the threats that come on the way. So down here, I've shared this picture, and in this picture, there are two kind of steps. We are again speaking about those silos, and in case of having these silos, what actions we can take, and without CSA, what could be the situation. So there are two kind of steps here, the steps in the black and the steps in red. The steps in black explain how the exploit works, and the steps in red are the possible actions to shut those exploitation down. And this is really messy, right? And another thing is, once this exploitation starts, it's really difficult to stop it. So another thing that I want to highlight, that these actions in red, one cannot perform them in vacuum without impacting another team or completely understanding the consequences to the application and to the business. So what will happen in such scenarios without having tools like CSA in place is the war room kind of scenario. So everybody tries to pull in necessary information together with correct team members together so that they can pull up the reasonable plan to stop that threat. And let me tell you, while it's going on in your war room, you are allowing that much more time for the attacker to be more malicious within the environment. So what action you could perform without CSA? Probably on the firewall side, you will say, hey, I'm going to stop. There is an attacker in the system, and I'm going to stop all the traffic that listens on this particular port for this application. Either ingress or egress, everything will be stopped. You might be thinking that, okay, customers are impacting, my business is getting impacted, customers are not able to see the application, but hey, ultimately we got rid of the attacker. Moving next level down, we have WAF or next gen WAF, which is a web application firewall, where you can block any set of HTTP requests. So you're literally blocking all these requests coming to your application, and your customer will get to know that the application is no more reachable. But again, we got rid of the attacker. So in both the situations, whatever we are doing, it's something that we don't want to do in a production grade environment. And this is not the best practice to follow. So With Cisco Secure Application, we can perform the blockage to these suspicious acts through RASP, which is a runtime application security protection. Here, to CSA, you get to define your policies where you can block your actions, where you can detect those actions, get notified that there is particular breach happening in the system, and you can get rid of that. That's the beauty of Cisco CSA. You detect vulnerabilities, you detect attacks, you block them in the runtime itself. So no more impact on your application and the business or the brand value for the company. So there are different alerts that you can set. You can integrate it with WebEx. You can integrate it with any HTTP payloads, say for example, PagerDuty or ITSM. So it's very easy to configure it, and I'll showcase in demo as well. All you need to do is to go to the settings, click on alerts, configure them, add actions, define the event type. If we are doing it for a vulnerability, a business risk, or an attack, you give the raw URL, authentication type, and JSON headers are optional. So with just main 6 steps, you are done. Your alerts are configured. So anytime the risk goes up and down, you get notified accordingly. So we have spoken about CSA, what it's capable of, and now we are going to speak about the main topic, which is BRO. So vulnerability and thus the exploitation risk management completely relies on CVSS scores, which stands for Common Vulnerability Scoring System. And CVSS is around since a long time. It assesses the severity of the security vulnerabilities. The objective of CVSS score is to help our security teams to prioritize their vulnerabilities, except it was not designed to prioritize based on risks. So the static score that we get from CVSS doesn't take into account any real world transactions aiming like that. And it's important to know for that matter that over a period of time, CVSS became less useful as an exploitation predictor. And that's why we have BRO, or business risk observability. So with the new score that we get from CSA, it's actually made possible through the integration that CSA has with additional 3 tools that we have, namely Cisco Talos, Cisco Kena, and Cisco Panoptica. Remember, we are speaking about CSA as one product, and now we are integrating it with 3 additional products of Cisco. And all these products, all these solutions are really intelligent solutions that Cisco has. Each of these help us to calculate that business risk score. So speaking about Talos, it's basically helps you to identify and modify the threat factor in that score. And when I say score, this is the business risk score that we see here on the screen. So Talos is the threat factor. Kena is the vulnerability factor in that score. And Panoptica is something that deals with the third-party APIs, and its score continuously changes. It's never the same. So let's break this down and talk about Talos in detail. If you don't know about Talos and hearing it for the first time, let me tell you that Talos is one of the largest commercial threat intelligence team in the world. And they are leaders in especially 3 areas. One is threat visibility. Second is actionable intelligence. And third, and the most important one, is the vulnerability research. On the screen that you see, here's a couple of vulnerabilities that are listed and the steps to mitigate those vulnerabilities. So Talos provides you the recommendations for how to identify and mitigate any of the threats. And now we are speaking of Talos integration with CSA. And please remember that Cisco Talos directly feeds CSA the list of bad actors. It basically says, hey, here is a list of IP addresses that we have seen in exploit before. And this allows you to identify all these bad actors when they come through the door. It's reflected in the business score, and business score is impacted accordingly. And it's also reflected in our attacks dashboard as malicious IP or IP ranges. Let me now take you to how Talos exactly look like. So This is the Talos link, the console. Here we can see we have close to 134 publicly disclosed vulnerabilities, and we have 79 zero-day reports. Zero-day reports are the one which were reported to the vendor and they are not yet publicly disclosed. So all the information, all the publicly disclosed information that you can get, it's available in Talos. And Cisco Talos is one of the top 15 companies who list their vulnerabilities publicly. So just to give you that, the risk score that we are getting through CSA, it's backed by such a powerful tool. Until now, we have just spoken about one tool. I'm now going to take you to another one, which is Kena. And this provides the additional vulnerability details to help us understand what's happening with the vulnerability throughout its lifespan and the actual exploitation in the real world. So Kena has AI ML algorithms that run in the background, and it is backed by a threat intelligence team. I want to highlight that there are very rare products in market which are backed by the threat intelligence team. Speaking about security, Kena is one of them. And there is magnitude categories of information that Kena grabs, but we are speaking about CSA and its integration with Kena. So some of the information or some of the categories that we pull in information about is malware analysis from Kena. And it tells if the malware is frequently using a particular CVE or a vulnerability. And it also tells if the vulnerability has been included in the exploit tools before, such as in the exploit databases or even on GitHub. So how exactly we count the CVE scores? Basically, they monitor all the chatter over the internet, things coming from blogs, things coming from social media, and all the dark web sources. And they even look at the information on the threat actors, favoring or even trying to deploy methods to take advantage of the vulnerability. And then they scoop all this information and paste it on the amount of data around the vulnerability and the volume and velocity of successful exploitation in the wild. So it's all real time. Remember, when a threat actors try to exploit, but it could not harm much, then you might see the CVE scores going down. And that's the reason we say that these scores are dynamic in nature. So the vulnerability uh, which is riskier today, it could not be the same risky tomorrow or day after tomorrow. So I'm not gonna sell Kena here, but again, I'm giving you the information that the business risk that we are speaking about, it's backed by such a reliable and trustworthy sources. Kena is the second one. So we have on the list the third tool, which is Panoptica. And this helps our customers make better choices around the APIs. So it actually profiles, analyzes, and shows risk associated to those external APIs. Now, please note that it's important to have these APIs to have a FQDN associated to it. That means they have to be able to reach out publicly. So how me as a customer can leverage Panoptica and use it in my business? Say, for example, I'm working on production grade environment and we are sending out things which are unsecured, maybe credit card details. And if there are any sort of vulnerability associated with APIs, that set of information can be highlighted by Panoptica. And if we are working on development environment and there you can make a decision whether you should be using a particular set of APIs or not. Maybe I have an idea that it's not going to be updated in future, so maybe I need to drop that. So that was all about Panoptica. So going back to the business risk and mapping this to our business transaction to an individual risk score, remember, we are getting very powerful insights from multiple tools We are getting information on vulnerability intelligence. We are getting information on the threat intelligence coming from Telos. We are getting the business context. We are also getting additional security insights that the Secure app already has given us. So at Cisco, we are consolidating all this into an easy, consumable top-line score of business risk, which will be helpful for our customers to react quickly, to reduce all that noise associated with involving threat or vulnerability. And we all know that we have very limited resources to fix everything. And for that matter, we get these insights to prioritize our work, which one to be picked firstly. All right. So speaking about the requirements, um, on the technical side of it, let me divide our audience into two parts. The one who are with us for the first time, I would urge you to reach out to our sales team to get you onboarded from level 0, and we'll be happy to get you onboarded with CSA. And the another part of our audience who are already there with us or maybe have deployed AppDynamics, AppD agents in their environment, for them, the good news is that on the technical side for CSA, you don't need to have any extra configuration. Why I say that? Because the CSA agents are already deployed in our customer environments as part of the AppD agents. All you need to do is to buy a separate CSA license. It's gonna be different from the AppD license. And once you have bought this CSA license, you'll start seeing the security tab in your controller UI. And with just a toggle button, you can enable security insights for your application. Just need to enable your application for security insights, and there is no other configuration required as such. So isn't that amazing? I'll show you in the demo as well. This was on the technical part to get you onboarded. Remember, all the agents are already there, deployed in our customer environment. You just need to buy the license and enable your application to fetch you the security insights. On the licensing side, there are a couple of questions that I want to highlight. We might be wondering that though we are speaking about Pro with CSA, but we have already spoken about three additional products like Telos, Cana, and Panoptica. Are we going to charge for those products as well? Well, the good news is no. It's CSA for which you will be signing up and registering yourself. CSA will be interlinked and integrated at the backend with all these products separately, and you don't need to be onboarded to each of these products one after the other. So for you, it's gonna be a single solution where you'll be onboarded, and you don't need to pay extra penny to get the business risk related insights from CSA through these products. And another question is like, which is a flip of the first one, is that if I buy the CSA license, could I get access to Telos, Cana, and Panoptica as well? Let me tell you that these products, these tools, or these solutions are the huge solutions, and they don't really do what we see calculating the business risk. They are much more wider scoped solutions. So say for example, Panoptica, it just not profiles the APIs, but also helps with the Kubernetes container deployment and CI/CD pipelines and container image management. So if I say, can I get access to all these features? If I just buy the CSA license, the answer is no, because it's a complete suite by itself. So, but when it comes to getting the security insight and the business risk related information, that is absolutely, absolutely free. All right. Now let's speak about the agents. So when we deploy CSA, please use the latest documentations which is available, and I'm gonna share that link along with this deck. So It's always recommended to follow the official documentation. On the agent side, we have Java and .NET related support, and 22.8 for Java is the minimum requirement, and for .NET is 23.3. Another thing that I want to highlight that we have language support around vulnerable library detection for .NET Core and .NET Framework for command execution, which is also available. Okay, now we don't want our customers to glue their eyes on screens whenever there is an issue. So for that matter, we have Splunk forwarding support for a while, where you can send all the detections to Splunk, and we recently have the support to send data to HTTP payloads for vulnerable events to HTTP endpoints, and that's where we have integration. You can even send it to WebEx, you can send it to ITSM or ServiceNow or PagerDuty too. So you can integrate it with Splunk, which is officially a part of Cisco now. Just need to go to settings and add a new connection, give your endpoint and token, and that's it. Your now CSA is now integrated with Splunk. Why you need to trust CSA coming from Cisco? Because we are the Cybersecurity Excellence Award winner in 2022. We were also awarded as the Cybersecurity Breakthrough Award in 2021. Not only that, for Gartner 2020 report, Cisco AppDynamics stood first, and I think for the report coming in 23, we have the Pro linked as well. So it gives a lot of credibility for Cisco to provide the best of the information to the customers. With that, let me now take you to the demo. So remember, we have covered the onboarding topics, that how we need to get started. And this is the portal that you see now. It's the AppD's controller UI that you see. And if you have not bought the security license, you will not be able to see the security tab here. Since it's already bought for me, that's why I'm able to see that. The thing that I want to show now is jumping onto the security. I bought the license. Now I'm gonna enable my application to fetch the security insights for me. So this is a home page. I'll jump onto the application where I can see the list of all the applications. And if you select that, just enable it and it will start fetching the security insight for you. It's already enabled for me. The other three security settings that you see is disable and inherit. The applications inherit from the controller by default, and inside an application, particular application, we have tiers, and applications are deployed on nodes. So nodes and tiers inherit from the application. So if I jump onto one application, here you see the tiers. We have multiple tiers, and the security setting says that it's inherit, and the status says it's enabled. Now, just to show you that it's inheriting from the application, let me go and disable the security setting for application. It should ideally disable the setting for the tiers as well. So let's jump onto the application and see the security setting is inherit and the status got disabled from enabled. Okay, so we can enable it because I don't want to impact it. It's the main application in our system, so I have enabled it back. So from the applications, all the lists that we can see, we can disable them. And here you can see a list of different status nodes: active, ready, supported, enabled. What does that mean? So active is where the APM nodes are registered and they're active in the AppD controller. Supported are the active nodes where you have the secure application supported agent deployed on it, and ready are the one which are ready to be registered. Enabled are the ones where you have the security setting enabled, and finally, if you have the CSA enabled, then we call that as a secured node. So we have all now what I'm gonna do next is jump onto the business transaction. This is where the business risk will be associated. So these are all the transactions that you see here. And if I click on the business risk, you can see there is a count and there is a severity associated to it. So 560 and warning, let's jump onto that and see what this speaks about. So if it's like 0 to 330, this is the normal severity. If it is 340 to 660, it's a normal severity. That means this particular business transaction is at risk. And if it is critical, that means I should keep everything away and just work on this particular risk. So we have all these in our system. And down on the right side, you see the recommendation. It says that you need to upgrade the Java and the library. The moment I clicked on it, I jumped from business transaction to the libraries tab. Here you can see the details, like which type of library is it and what is the status of this vulnerability and what are all the vulnerabilities associated to that library. You can export them. Remember, when you export, you get two files. One is a JSON file and another is a CSV file. JSON is the file where you get the list of all the filters that you have applied to get the results, and it will fetch you close to top 10,000 lines. So if you have thousands of vulnerabilities, be extra cautious to choose the right set of filters. The CSV file is the main file which has a exact data, like what is the Kenna score, CVE related details, and the current library details. So we have seen the vulnerability, and this is the Kenna score that we have talked about. Now let's jump on to one CVE, and it will take us to the vulnerability tab. Here we see that it has a Kenna score of 100 associated to it. It means this is an active breach on the internet, and it can be easily exploited. So what we can do, we see the overview where we get introduction of what exactly is happening with this vulnerability and also the steps to remediate it. You also get some references, the GitHub references that you can follow, where you can get details on what exactly line of code that I need to get rid of and what I need to add on. So you get all that information here. It's too handy. Everything is in one place that you need to get and should be concerned. We have seen vulnerabilities. Now we are jumping onto observations. So observations are not that critical vulnerabilities, but it comes with a lot of stack trace that you can get information on. So if I click on one vulnerability, here I see the timestamp and stack trace. So you can get all these additional information diving deep into that stack trace, where it's coming from. And once you see any set of vulnerability, what you can do is to define actions to mitigate it, to address that. And those actions are performed in policies. So let's now jump on to the settings sections and try to create a policy which will help us to block any threats in our system. So I'm gonna create a new policy. So the default action is detect for any policy. So here you can create policy for file system, database queries, libraries loaded at runtime. You can create that policy for all the applications that are available in your environment, or you can select one particular application and you can even drill down to particular tier. Just note that the block action is graded out. This is because I have by default selected all tiers. If you select all tiers, the block will be graded out because we really don't want to impact the runtime. So you have to select one tier to select block as an action. So right now I'll go with the detect and I'll configure the rule. that if any of the processor or a stack trace contains or matches the regular expression, the value that I'm going to give, then perform this action. That action could be block, detect, or ignore. Maybe you are doing some sort of testing. Uh, in that case, you don't want to really block that and just ignore it. You can do that. So let's hit save. It says policy already exists because I already created that. But at any given point of time, you can come and modify your policy just by editing it. It's very easy. So next thing that we are going to do is to configure alerts. And uh, for that, I'm going to settings and clicking alerts. And the actions and tools, there are two tabs of it that we see. So whenever I create an action, there is a default rule that automatically gets created with that action. Right now, I'm creating a new action named vulnerability logging. And here you select the action type, which is a HTTP, and the event type. Is it for a vulnerability? Is it for a business risk or an attack? You can select any of the three. In my case, I'm going to select it for vulnerability and hit next. Next, you define the method type, which is going to be post, and the raw URL. Authentication type recommended is the basic one where you need to give the username and password. Just this is for today's demo, and I'm just gonna choose none. And this is the most important step, adding a payload, where you get the predefined variables listed on the left side. All you need to do is copy and provide it in a JSON format. So on what items I need to be alerted on. So I'll say title, vulnerability title, and the status of that vulnerability. All right. So you can see another set of variables that you can choose. I'm just choosing two. Here we get the curl, a ready-made curl that you can copy and save for later, and review all other information if everything looks good. Yeah, and hit save. And we have created our alert. With that, we are done with the demo. And I'm gonna stop this session and see if our panel is available. Right now, what I'm gonna do is to invite Umar. He's our panelist, and he often speaks to customer on Cisco CSA. So, Umar, I have a lot of questions from the customers. So, if you don't mind, I would like to call you up on the stage, and I have a couple of questions that maybe first of all, if you can introduce yourself, Umar.
Thank you, Gurpreet. Hi, guys. This is Omar Shafiq. I am on the sales side, engineering, and I cover all the customers who are interested in the security use cases, conversation vis-a-vis our solution, which we discussed today. And thank you
Awesome.
very much for inviting me as a panelist here today.
Thank you, Umar. So I have a first question to you that I have a WAF, and this is a question from Cisco's customer who says that I have a WAF already and several security analysis tools as well. So what is CSA going to catch in that kind of environment for me? Over to you.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great point. I mean, if you look at the security approach, we believe in, and that's how I suppose a security solution should be set up is the idea of defense in depth. And earlier in your presentation, we saw that if you block using firewall or WAF, you can actually drop production usage traffic also, because the firewall WAF do not have the inside out visibility into application. Whereas when we look at the CSA solution, which is essentially RASP, has inside-out application visibility, and the solution looks at the runtime of your code base. Now, here with CSA, we have opportunity to go very specific and block certain aspects of our code base, so not to impact production traffic. It's very important to understand that in terms of especially when you have zero-day attack, then how we can implement security with minimum impact to production traffic.
Awesome.
So,
Yeah, thanks, Umar. Here comes my second question. So, customer says that we scan in our pipeline and set up product scans within our environment. What's the value of your product in catching additional vulnerabilities here? I know I'm covered this, but I just want to hear from your perspective as well.
yeah, thank you. So as we discussed, and I think it's pretty clear from the presentation and the demo that CSA is a solution which runs in the runtime. So you load the code, and we are monitoring the code which is running. What happens when you scan your libraries before you deploy? That could change what you have in your dev, and when you promote your code into production, there's always a drift. Sometime a new patch comes in, and because of the business criticality, it only goes into the production. So your dev environment and your production environment are not exactly the same. And if you have CSA, that drift between your dev and production is what we can catch, because CSA is looking at the production code, what is in memory, and it's a very, it gives you the real picture of what is factually running, as opposed to the development code, which you have, might have not upgraded in a while. So that's very important. And then the other aspect is when we run scans, a lot of the time application teams, especially from business, do not like additional scans because that can impact the performance of application. So here we are not doing periodic scans, but actually monitoring the runtime. So that also is not creating any overhead on your application from a performance perspective.
Absolutely. Loved it. Here comes my third question. So customer says this is tricky one, and seems like they have tried RASP solution earlier. So they say with our previous RASP solution experience, it was very expensive that we found out, and it required a lot of overhead. Will this crash my application? That's the question.
Yeah, that I think fair ask. Now, with the way CSA product works, the architecture is such that it gathers the information from the agent, and then we send it up to our SaaS controller, so we can do an off-agent analysis of all the information we collect, and all the feeds we talked about earlier are sort of integrated at the controller level. The overhead typically you see with agent is when there's a lot of computational resources required. And in this case, in our solution, we do it at the controller level, not at the agent level. And in addition, your APM agent, which is part of AppD, is providing the application context, and that is also at the controller level. What we do is we correlate your AppD APM information from the AppD agent and the security information from the CSA at the controller, and then provide you results in the UI. Now that helps with not having any additional utilization on the machine itself. So this is how we solve the very classical over usage of a product on a compute node or a code base. The analysis done offsite.
Yeah, I hope they found this trustworthy and have confidence that their application is not going to crash with CSA.
And in addition, like you mentioned earlier, the agent we are not installing any additional code when when customers decide to start security. It's already part of the apt agent. So there's no additional software installation required. If you're already an apt customer with an apt agent, security is essentially part of it.
Yeah, especially for Cisco, we are known for security. So yeah, customers can definitely rely on us. Here comes my fourth and probably the last one. Customer says it's very hard for our teams to keep up with constantly evolving threats and the continuous increase in vulnerabilities that are found exposed in our applications. Can this solution help us close this gap and reduce our exposure to the risk? Again, this was addressed, but from your perspective, what's your take on this one?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, pretty much every customer we talk to have, it doesn't matter what vertical they are in, it's a very similar problem. The vulnerabilities is growing, especially after the usage of open source and a lot of fast development which is happening today, because to keep up with the industry and the peer and the competition. So unfortunately, the list of vulnerability is not growing. It's not going less, but it's actually growing a lot more. And things do get complicated when there's a lot of vulnerabilities and other issues constantly being reported. um, as you mentioned and we saw in the demo, the key to control the sprawl is to think about your business risk score, uh, and not only rely on the CVE data, but also other sources of threat intelligence like Talos, Panoptica, Kenna, and and then aligning that business risk with your critical application. So the key aspect is, when we get the business risk score, it's not done in vacuum. It's actually tied to your application. So tying the business risk score to your application, in addition to CVE, using Talos, Panoptica, and Kenna, provides you a very a reduced subset of vulnerabilities which you can tackle, and also it provides you remediation, as we saw in the demo, that how to quickly remediate. So if you think about this vulnerability issue, what we are helping with the solution is to really reduce the time to remediate those vulnerabilities.
Awesome. Very rightly said. So this is not just one solution. This is a solution backed by multiple other powerful and intelligent solutions of Cisco. So definitely, it's gonna take the game at another level. So thank you, Umar. Tanner, do we have any question that is unanswered?
We don't have any at this time, but just a good reminder for all of our participants and attendees today. If you do have a question, please use the Q&A panel here on WebEx, and we will provide you with an answer. While we do wait here a minute or two, Gurpreet or Umar, I will open up the floor to you. Is there anything that you would like to cover before we do wrap up? Anything else that you would like to touch on?
Oh, I shared one link with you. Maybe it's getting started with the CSA. Maybe
Sure.
if you are to pass it on to our audience, I think that is good.
Of course, we'll place a link here in the chat on getting started with Cisco Secure Application. I'll also provide a couple links in the chat on a post-webinar discussion thread where y'all can follow up and ask any further questions. It'll also include some links to different resources for you that Gurpreet and Umar discussed in today's session. It doesn't look like we do have any questions at this moment, but we will leave that Q&A window open for a couple more moments. At this moment, Gurpreet, I do want to thank you for your time today, as well as Umar and our panelists for being available, as well as our whole team for bringing your knowledge to the Cisco community today. As I just mentioned, if you do have a question, we'll keep that Q&A window open for a couple more moments. We also do have those poll questions still available to vote on via Slido as well if you want to provide your answers there. For even more tutorials, demonstrations, and future webinars, please visit the Cisco Learning Network. Gurpreet, before I do a little wrap up here, is there anything else that you would like to mention?
I just want to say thank you everyone for joining us as an audience. Thank you to the panelists for sparing your valuable time and making this happen. Thanks to you, Tanner, at the end for hosting this wonderful session. Yeah.
Absolutely happy to. It was a great session today. Hope a lot of our attendees got some good use out of it. Just as a reminder for everybody, it usually takes about 5 business days for today's session to be uploaded to our learning plan. I'll provide a link in the chat as well as on that post-webinar discussion thread where you can find that recording. This live stream will also be available on the YouTube Cisco U Learning and Certification page as well, in case you want to go touch back on it and watch it once again. I am also providing the link, as I just mentioned, to the post-webinar discussion thread here in the chat as well. Please use that for any follow-up questions that you may have for either of our presenters. Your feedback is important to us, and at this time, you'll be directed to a post-webinar survey. Please take the time to participate in that. It helps us plan out future sessions. Once again, we thank everybody for joining us today, and we will see you next time on the Cisco Learning Network.
Thank you.